impact. And breaking it all down, of course, is CBS 4 political specialist Sean Boyd. She is in the main studio. Sean, there's a lot on the line tonight.
You bet, Kelly. Colorado's Senate race is one of two in the nation that will likely decide which party controls the U.S. Senate. And tonight we learn who incumbent Cory Gardner will face. We want to go straight to our CBS 4 analysts, Republican Dick Wadhams and Democrat Mike Dino, and I'm dying to hear what you guys think. Let's start first with the turnout. It's about 40%. Does that tell us anything, Mike?
Well, I think it tells us, by noon today, about a 250,000 of the unaffiliated voters had voted in the Democratic primary. So there's an excitement there. They definitely want to nominate somebody that's going to beat Senator Gardner, and I think that enthusiasm showed with the turnout.
Dick, what do you think?
Well, I don't think it's a terribly impressive turnout, to be honest, Sean. I mean, you would have thought that with the high-profile nature of this Democratic primary, that the turnout, I thought, would be well over 50%, and it doesn't look like it's even going to come close to that.
Dick, what do you think is going to drive voters' decision in this primary?
Well, clearly, the Hickenlooper had a lot of goodwill with the Democratic voters. I mean, he was governor for 8 years, and I think there was an electability argument that did well for him. But he's not the candidate that he was 6 months ago when he got into this race, or whenever it was. He has been, I think, severely hurt by the ethics investigations, the contempt citation. And that's why the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee and other Democratic groups had to spend more than $7 million to bail him out. And it makes you wonder what they're thinking tonight, because they hadn't planned on spending a nickel in this race, in the primary, and they had to spend $7 million to drag him across the line.
So they may be worried, but Mike, what do you think voters are thinking when they cast their votes tonight? Are they thinking the controversies? Are they thinking who can beat Cory Gardner? What's going through their minds?
Well, first of all, I disagree with Dick. I don't think they had to drag him across the line. He looks pretty successful in his victory. And in a lot of ways, I really feel that this helps him clear the slate and start anew for the general election. And he's got, he's got a resounding victory building here, and it's quite impressive. And I think voters are going to go back to the governor, the mayor they know, they love, and they appreciate. And he's going to be very competitive in the general. Particularly
millions will buy you a lot of landslide.
Let me ask you, Mike, Hickenlooper has long sold himself as a businessman more than a politician, even after 16 years in office, as you mentioned, first as mayor and then as governor. Do you think his ethics violations for accepting those illegal gifts made voters see him as more that typical politician, and does that hurt him?
Well, listen, he was a mayor for 8 years, a governor for 8 years, so he certainly took on some of the politician sheen. But in light of other ethical lapses that we see on the national level, they pale in comparison to what we have in this state. And I think people in this state still feel we have an upstanding leadership and a good ethical person in John Hickenlooper.
All right, so we are declaring John Hickenlooper the winner in this primary real early in this race. So clearly he has the enthusiasm behind him, Dick.
Well, like I say, $7 million will get you a lot. This is his problem, though, Sean, is that there's no doubt in my mind that his negatives have gone up with the broader population, broader electorate. I'll make a prediction right here. The first public poll that comes out after this primary is over is going to show Cory Gardner is much closer to Hickenlooper than what people think at this point. And we'll see if my prediction comes true. But he took on a lot of water. He is the only Democratic candidate, or Republican candidate for that matter, who I know of in 2020 who has been held in contempt by a state's ethics commission. You're going to hear that right through election night. And it's a powerful argument, and remember, in a general election.
We've talked in the past about how historically Colorado Senate races are, they're decided by just a few points, no matter who's running in these races. They are. So, this one, if it follows that historic pattern, will be a tight race, which means both candidates are going to have to seal up that base and then get that little sliver of the true independents to win this. Will Hickenlooper, do you think, Mike, have trouble with the base that is anti-fracking? Is there any danger of those voters saying, I'm going to sit this out rather than casting my vote for him? Does he have to do something to really reach out to them right now?
Well, certainly, I think after you get through a bruising primary, you always need to reach out to the opponent supporters and people that are a little skeptical of you. But, this is a resounding victory, and it catalyzes a lot of things for John Hickenlooper that were, piling up on him. And I think he gets a chance to shed that. And Cory Gardner, unfortunately for him, he's got to run a different race than 2014. It's flipped completely on him. He had a situation where he had a president of the other party who was helping him. Now John Hickenlooper has that dynamic, and I think it favors John in a huge way.
Dick, how do you disagree with that? Cory does have to overcome Trump's negatives in this.
The only positive about John Hickenlooper's campaign is Donald Trump's on the ballot in Colorado as well. Mike is right about that. But on every other metric, every other measure of this race, John Hickenlooper has been a horrible candidate, the worst candidate in the nation. He first man to ever be held in contempt. The only thing he had going for him was Chuck Schumer and the DSCC's $7 million that swamped poor Andrew Romanoff. Poor Andrew, he wins the first House majority in 30 years, 10 years ago, and he gets rewarded for it by getting the heck kicked out of him by his own party, $7 million. Poor Andrew is all I can say.
But if you were advising Cory Gardner in this campaign, how does he balance this? He needs Trump to seal up the base, but at the same time, he needs that sliver of unaffiliated voters to win this.
Listen, he's got the Republican base solidly behind Cory. What Cory needs to do, which is what he's doing, is telling the story about what he's been doing as a senator for the past 5.5 years. The U.S. Space Command to the Springs, BLM to Grand Junction, the Arkansas Valley Conduit, which is funded for the first time in 55 years. He has a great story to tell, and Coloradans want to know what an incumbent U.S. senator has done for them during their term, and Cory will tell that story. And on top of it, Cory is just a far superior candidate to John Hickenlooper. I almost, down deep, Hickenlooper's probably wishing he had lost tonight, because now he's going to have to spend 4 more months on the road having to run against Cory Gardner, who is probably one of the best candidates.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he's just regretting this win tonight, right, Mike?
Yeah, well, it's quite a relief. And, Dick is repeating the $7 million that was spent, but clearly it was well spent, and the result is one you want. It wasn't that he eked out a victory. It's pretty resounding. But I want to say this. I do think that Senator Gardner, when you look at it, for a Republican representing the state of Colorado, he is the type of Republican, if you want a Republican representing you, that should, that you can appreciate. And he has a great spirit about himself. The challenge, of course, is that he is, really intricately aligned himself with President Trump. I don't think would see the stuff that's come to this state unless the president allowed it to. Those have been executive decisions. And, he's just not going to be able to run away from the president. And as much as Mark Udall could not run away from President Obama, Senator Gardner can't run away from President Trump.
President Trump is his greatest asset when it comes to the Republican base, but greatest liability, I think, when it comes to some of these unaffiliated voters.